Welcome to this evening's Operation Respond with myself, Imogen Edmonds from Red Wing Solutions, and Garth MacAnally from Life and Progress. Garth is going to talk to you about stress. Over to you, Garth.
I am, and I'm actually feeling that stress at the moment, Imogen, I can tell you. So the technical difficulties overcome at last. So apologies, everyone, if I've kept you waiting. Um, my father used to say to me, anticipation is sometimes greater than realization. I hope that's not the case this evening, but I hope that your anticipation has kept you switched on. For tonight, we're going to take a deep dive into stress, because stress is the thing, isn't it? The thing that gets everything. And now I'm not shy to people popping stuff into chat. I know we've got some moderation there, so any questions along the way, anything like that, totally happy. I'm not going to be talking about any subjects this evening that could be triggering or upsetting in any way. So we're just going to be keeping things a light discussion surrounding stress. So yeah, good question, isn't it? Why stress? Well, we need stress, don't we? We need a bit of stress. We need to maybe feel that we've got to get on with something that is part of life. But sometimes stress can build up on us in lots of tiny, innocuous ways and just keep adding to the whatever it is, the vessel that we are. And I think it's something that we don't always get to ask questions of ourselves. Um, but there are questions that we should be asking of ourselves, um, because it is really a question that we need to approach with a certain amount of honesty and genuinity to ourselves, because we are number one, aren't we? We've got to look after ourselves. Other people can help us, support us with the challenges that come our way, but ultimately we are looking after ourselves. So we must be able to ask ourselves a question, and we must be able to do that in a sort of genuine way. But when we do ask questions of ourselves, do we actually answer them? So this is a little bit like checking in on yourself, and we're going to be running a campaign in March about checking in on yourself and taking those opportunities that may present, because we don't necessarily stand in the mirror in the morning and look at ourselves in the eye and say, "How are you?" And we might do that for others, and we may be very supportive of others, and we may even take that next step further, that if we feel there's something that we might be able to support with, that we can then ask, but really, how are you? So we don't do that for ourselves. We're certainly not in the mirror in the morning. You're looking great, and out the door you go. But the moments for reflection, I think, are important. We'll be running a campaign on that, as I say, in March. So that's a bit like sort of like an MOT for well-being, if you like. Um, but the answers, the questions, am I coping okay? Because it might just be a quick check-in. Am I doing all right? Where am I in my sort of measure of things? Am I going to have a great day today, or am I going to have a sort of not so great day today? We don't really sort of get to that point, do we? But I think that we should. And then when we do ask these questions, I think we should answer them. And when we do, that we answer them honestly, because we're only fooling ourselves. That doesn't help anybody. It helps no one. No one in the entire universe does that help. So I don't know why we do it. So yeah, we need to ask these questions, because there is an inescapable truth. And that inescapable truth is something that we can't get away from. It's there, it's intrinsic. It is. It's stress is in our lives, and we're all subjected to stresses. So let's take this first moment to understand that stress is something in my life, and that I'm subjected to things that happen that maybe I might cause, or maybe something outside of my area of control causes. Um, yeah, lots of things. Sometimes dealing with somebody else's stress is a very stressful thing to be doing yourself. But let's define stress, shall we? Because stress is stated as a mental or emotional strain or tension resulting from adverse or demanding circumstances. And there is a response to that. And that occurs when there's an imbalance between the demands made on an individual and the individual's demand or perceived ability to cope with those demands. So what I'd like you to do, if you've got a pen and piece of paper handy, or you can keep a sort of tally of your scores, we're going to run a quick stress test. Because I think that if we're going to ask ourselves questions, we've got to know what we're working with, haven't we? Am I working with, I'm a glass of wine in this evening and I'm fine, thank you very much. I just want to chill out, put my feet up, watch a bit of nonsense on the telly, wind down, go to bed, and wake up and have another great day. That would be brilliant, wouldn't it? But hey, let's do the stress test. So very easy, straightforward. You just got to write your scores down. 0 is never, 1 is almost never, 2 is sometimes, 3 is fairly often, and 4 is very often. Okay, so just bear that in mind. We're going to run through. I'm going to give you a couple of moments just to, I don't want you to overthink it. I just want the first thing that comes out of your head. And by the way, I'm not going to be asking you what your scores are. That's something that you keep personally, unless you wish to share them, of course, in which case, yeah, we're open to a bit of that going on. So, yeah, let's get started. So this is the perceived stress scale. It's a classic stress assessment instrument, sorry. And the tool, while originally developed back in the 80s, remains a popular choice for helping us really understand how different situations affect our feelings and our perceived stress. So the questions in the scale ask you about your feelings and thoughts during the last month. In each case, you'll be asked to indicate by circling how often you felt or thought a certain way. Just write that number down, where it's 0, never, 4, all the way through to 4 very often. So yeah, let's get on with the first one. In the last month, how often have you been upset because of something that has happened unexpectedly? In the last month, how often have you been upset because something that happened unexpectedly? Question 2. In the last month, how often have you felt that you are unable to control the important things in your life? So how often have you felt that you are unable to control the important things in your life? Question number 3 coming. In the last month, how often have you felt nervous and stressed? Sort of on the edge of stuff. How often have you felt nervous and stressed in the last month? 0, never, 1, almost never, 2, sometimes, 3, fairly often, or 4, very often. Question number 4. By the way, there's 10 questions here, in case you're wondering how many questions you're going to be sat through, and it's causing a little bit of anxiety. I don't want to do that. So yeah, there'll be 10 questions. So in the last month, how often have you felt confident about your ability to handle your personal problems? And those are yours. No one else's, yours. Your stuff. In the last month, have you felt confident about your ability to sort stuff out? Question number 5. In the last month, how often have you felt that things were going your way? Wow. Joy, isn't it? When the plan runs along exactly as you imagined it to be. So in the last month, how often have you felt that things were going your way? Question number 6. In the last month, how often have you found that you could not cope with all the things that you had to do? Have you felt that you haven't been able to cope? 0, never, 1, almost never, 2, sometimes, 3, fairly often, 4, very often. Question number 7. In the last month, how often have you been able to control irritations in your life? I'm thinking about that now. That's just jumping into my mind. So yes, I can answer that one. I'm not telling you what the answer is, but yes. How often have you been able to control irritations in your life? Question number 8. In the last month, how often have you felt that you were on top of things? That you were doing okay? Maybe 80% of the time, maybe. Yeah, 100% is a bit impossible, isn't it? But in the last month, how often have you felt you're on top of things? Question number 9. How often have you been angered in the last month because of things that were outside of your control, outside of your sphere of influence? So what externals are then coming into play here? How often have you been angered? Never, almost never, sometimes fairly often, or very often in the last month. I also know my answer to that question without having to overthink it. And question number 10. Finally, in the last month, how often have you felt that difficulties were piling up so high that you couldn't overcome them? Never, almost never, sometimes, fairly often, or very often. That's it. You should have some numbers. And I'm going to give you a couple of moments just to add those up. Because I'm going to now tell you what the meaning of your perceived stress scale, I can't even say that, stress scale, what your score is. So yeah, let's have a go. Maybe hopefully you've had a chance to add those up. So the range is from 0 to 40. And obviously the higher the score, the greater the perceived stress of the person. And I'm using that word, I'm emphasizing perceived because it's your perception, nobody else's, just yours. So 0 to 13, that's a low perceived stress. Okay. So yeah, you may be low, but it's your perception. Somebody else may not have that perception of you. But keep that in mind, it's your perception. 14 to 26 is considered moderate. I think you know where this is going. 27 to 40 considered high perceived stress. Right, so you have those numbers. They're yours. Right, let's get on to the next bit. Why we react the way we do. Why do we react to life stresses the way we do? What actually is stress? So we go back to that definition. It's your perceived stress about the ability to do or not do to do stuff. So, but what can I ask a question? And can people just maybe answer this question? What is stress to you? What's your perceived stress? What does stress mean to you? And any responses, of course, we'll just will anonymize there. Can't see anything coming through, but then I'm not a Zoom. um, is there a chat function, Imogen? There is. Okay. Thank you. Are you
Yeah,
able to?
they'll come through. Don't worry.
They'll come through. Okay.
We've got
Great.
to find our keyboards and type, haven't we?
Yes.
Yes.
No stress. Anyone want to come forward with what does stress mean to you?
So you've got a range of answers here, Garth. You've got
Oh,
everything from being
how do I see those, Imogen?
well, I probably you should be able to see them by pressing the chat button if you can see it at the
Uh,
bottom. But
right.
I'll
So if
tell you
I
what they are. You've got a range of answers from feeling overwhelmed,
oh
unable to deal with it,
I can
feeling anxious, feeling out of control. How you react can be stress. Loss of
yeah,
control due to other people's actions can be stress.
yes.
More overwhelm. Situations on how people react and to different things and their actions. You've got a range of answers.
That's fantastic. So those all indicate very much as I kind of would already be expecting those answers because the answers are personal to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is our own thing. So your reaction to a potentially stressful event is unique. Is unique. And how you react to stresses in your life is affected by our nature and our nurture. But is it down to genetics? What do people think about that? Is it genetics or life experience? Any quick answers? What do we think there? Genetically, are we programmed to be stressed and therefore our genes decide how much stress we get? Or is it the life's experiences?
Both.
Yes, I think that's absolutely spot on. It is both.
Yeah,
There's a bit
both.
of both in there because our lived environment teaches us so much more than we realize, and sometimes that stuff just goes in subconsciously. Yeah, it just builds up. We have this invisible knowledge that we draw upon. So yeah, genetics, life experiences. So I think that we understand the natural stress response. So For example, when you encounter a perceived threat, and here's the example that a large dog barks at you during your morning walk. You can't see the dog necessarily, but you hear that bark. And your hypothalamus, which is a tiny region at the base of your brain, sets off an alarm system in your body through a combination of nerve and hormonal signals. This system prompts adrenal glands located on top of your kidneys to release a surge of hormones, including adrenaline and cortisol. So that perceived threat, we're getting this. And of course, once we get this, cortisol all wants to join in the party because they're joined together. Both are very important functions. Adrenaline increases your heart rate, elevates your blood pressure, and boosts energy supplies. Whereas cortisol, the primary stress hormone, increases sugars, glucose, into the bloodstream and enhances your brain's use of glucose. So it's actually getting ready. So that use of glucose increases the availability of substances that repair tissue. So what's all this about? Why does the body do this to us? And why does it do it without us even really knowing? Well, it's a complex alarm system. And it helps the body communicate with regions of your brain that actually do control mood, motivation, and fear. And cortisol, though, also curbs functions that would be non-essential or detrimental in what is a fight or flight situation. It alters our immune system responses and suppresses our digestive system, the reproductive system, and growth processes, because we don't need those things as a vessel because we are in fight or flight. That's the alarm system. Fight or flight. We've all heard of this, the 3Fs, fight, flight, or freeze. Well, you know, we're all related to our ancestors who did the runaway thing. That saber-toothed tiger scares me, I'm off. I live to survive another day. However, if I maybe had been an alpha male or female and I thought that I was able to fight that saber-toothed tiger, well, I may not come off best. I may come off second best. I may be injured. So the body has got all of the things that it needs. The brain's got massive access to this and opens up the floodgates. So the body then starts to repair itself, that hopefully after the period that the event finishes, that we get a tail off of both adrenaline and cortisol. One disappears a little bit faster than the other. It's cortisol that hangs around. Cortisol that we need to kind of work with. So when stresses are always present and you constantly feel under attack, that flight or flight reaction stays on. Now that is fair if we're fairly normal neurotypical, we can say that. However, people with neurodiversity and aspects on spectrums can remain hypervigilant 100% of the time. And so that
Worth
is
bearing in
also,
mind.
that is something that we need to sort of be bearing in mind, maybe for ourselves or maybe for others that are part of our family or extended family or friends, neighbors, work colleagues. So yeah, those cortisol is there. So yeah, those 3Fs, fight, flight, or freeze. So which one are you? Well, it may depend on the situation you find yourself in, because these days, it's not so much the physical. It's not so much the physical aspects of the saber-toothed tiger anymore. But we have something now, psychological injury. We have things that are encroaching upon that fight or flight and trigger us. Now, those triggers, that's triggering our emotions, because that's what stress kind of is. It's the emotion, and it's what it means emotionally for you. And when I ask you what stress meant to you, your body already had stuff sorted out. It relates the things that stress you, and that actually stresses you. So I apologize for raising your cortisol levels and stress levels slightly, but the body does it automatically. It does it so quickly we can't even begin to imagine the speeds that it travels around our body. So yeah, which one are you? So I was given 5 words early on in my career from a mentor, and they said to me, these 5 words you can apply to any situation. And those 5 words are: what we focus on develops. That's not to say that we should be focusing on things to the exclusion of everything else, but if we can turn our attention to something, and by the way, multitasking is urban myth. It's just lots of things to do. We don't actually solve 4 million problems at once. We're kind of one at a time. And we need to give it one at a time because it needs all of our attention. However, our attention can be distracted, and it can be distracted by our body's state. So what we focus on develops. So just 5 words that I found really useful, because if I do find myself asking myself some questions, that just seems to slip into my memory. Yeah, what I focus on is going to develop. So if I'm going to focus on today being a great day, the chances are I'm going to have a great day. Unless something outside of my sphere of influence comes along and knocks me off my perch, in which case I'm stressed. But we can work with that. There's things that we can do. So understanding the natural stress response is that adrenaline does the bit that gives you the superhuman strength. You hear about these stories of people being able to lift cars off people, off road traffic accidents, and and just finding incredible human stress, human strength. And that comes through the adrenaline. Of course, then that cortisol, the primary stress hormone, that increases the ability to use the body's resources. And also then, if we do become injured, then that it will help repair tissue. So actually, it sounds quite good, doesn't it? In the face of it. But cortisol, let's just go a bit deeper into that, because here we go. Cortisol is a steroid hormone. When it's used in medications, it's known as a hydrocortisone. It's produced by us in the zona fasciculata of the adrenal cortex. That's the adrenal gland, and it's released in response to stress, low blood glucose concentration. So when we take a dip in our blood glucose, it also then starts to activate as well. So diet has an impact on cortisol. So cortisol regulates a wide response throughout the body: metabolism, immune response, and it also has a very important role in helping the body respond to stress. So it's necessary. We need it. It's not a wrong thing. But when the stress response goes haywire and the body's stress response system is normally fairly self-limiting, limiting, and once that threat has gone, a perceived threat has passed, hormone levels return to normal. Adrenaline and cortisol levels drop, and your heart rate and blood pressure returns to baseline levels, and other systems resume their regular activities. But you might think, well, what's that got to do with me and my day job? I'm looking after loads of kids, and maybe I'm doing this role. There's lots of things going on. I'm very, very busy, and some particular activity or behavior then just outside my sphere of influence just comes along and gives us a kick in the guts. Well, we're then going over a little, maybe we're going, and if we're having continued episodes and we're not doing anything about it, we're just increasing levels, and things might seem to get worse. So when those stresses are always present and you constantly feel under attack, well, the fight or flight system then stays turned on, and it's down to you to turn it off. So long-term activation, overexposure to cortisol. So we're going to talk short-term, medium-term, and long-term, because it will begin to disrupt all of your body's processes, and an increased risk of health problems coming from that, including anxiety, depression, digestive problems, headaches, heart disease, sleep problems, weight gain, memory and concentration impairment. Oh my word, that's a list and a half, isn't it? Well, what are the general early warning signs then? Well, irritability, impatience, being edgy, uptight, snapping at others, tending to blame them for the fact you're in a bad mood. Maybe it's oversensitivity. Maybe we are a bit oversensitive, and sometimes we may feel the world is getting a little bit more oversensitive and easily taken offense where actually none was intended. Or being liable to see things in a negative light more often than not. But feeling tired, unable to sleep, or sleeping badly and waking up feeling that you haven't slept, that's a big sign. A change in your normal eating habits, eating more or less, but maybe replacing some of our more healthy options with non-healthy options. Fast food and chocolate. Chocolate, by the way, is very dark chocolate, and it's over 70% very good for you. In good doses. But yeah, we could go into lots of different things. But stress is a symptom, right? So we need to understand that stress is something that I can do something to treat the symptom, but what do I do the long term? So we're going to be looking at other things as we move forward here. But maybe it's not just our eating. Maybe we're actually relying on other coping mechanisms. Maybe that glass of wine turns into 2 or 3 glasses of wine. Or maybe it's a recreational drug. Or maybe it's a prescription drug and we're maybe doing more than we maybe should on our prescription. So there's different ways that we might have of coping. Um, I've never heard a bad thing about talking with when it comes to coping, because talking really does help. Sharing does help. But we need to be able to talk with people that we can trust, obviously, that will keep things in confidence that we may not want other people to know about. But yeah, there's things that we can do, and talking is always a really good place to be starting. But that feeling, that physical feeling of that stress, that long-term stress coming in, maybe that nausea, maybe it's really upsetting our tummy, and that we're not as we should be. Maybe it's a nervous twitch, habits, nail biting, scratching, knee jiggling. However, knee jiggling is another way for people to ground themselves and to sort of get rid of excess energy, especially maybe on some neurodivergence spectrums where there's countless energy and fidgeting and just the inability to sit still. So knee jiggling may not be a sign of stress in that particular person, but it may be a sign is that they actually might need to get up and walk around a little bit and release some of that. But anyway, yeah, we don't get bogged down in any particular area here. So yeah, early warning signs. Well, this carries on. That list continues. Tension and fatigue, that head, shoulder, neck, and backache, tired eyes, muscle twitching at the corner of your eye. Who's had muscle twitching at the corner of their eye? All right, okay. So, very quick question: how many of you? It happens for me as well. Um, I run to the mirror to see if I can see it because it feels like I should see it. And there's nothing, and you think, but it's still going and I can't see anything. What's that about? Well, I don't really know, but it is a sign of stress. It's the body going, oh, having a little bit of a minor wobble. Anyway, yeah, that can sort of then go into like dry mouth, stiff jaw, sweaty palms, cold fingers. Remember, cortisol controls body thing. We don't need circulation at our toes and our fingertips because the body requires more core action from the body's resources. So it doesn't pump blood out to those areas as kind of should. Oxygen levels change within our body and it's directed to where we kind of need it. But yeah, all these things, all this stuff just happens without us really knowing. We can have indigestion, heartburn, frequent runs to the toilet. Maybe it's a bladder infection. There's breathlessness, erratic breathing, hyperventilation, heart palpitations, frequent colds and headaches, weight loss or gain, impotence, loss of libido. Because don't forget, the body's shutting down. It doesn't need to worry about libido. It's running away from the saber-toothed tiger. That's effectively what it's doing. So yeah, I'm not thinking about that. Thank you very much. I'm thinking about tomorrow and actually living another day. So yeah, early warning signs, and they keep going on. But of course, there's a comorbidity. There is things run in parallel. So I may have something else going on for me that's causing some of these symptoms. So when I do ask myself questions, I need to work out, really, is that more emotional, or actually is this something that physical that's beginning to come on? Because stress will reveal itself physically if we leave it unattended. Well, let's look at emotional symptoms, because these lists just keep coming. Increased anxiety, panic attacks, loss of self-esteem, depression, negativity, hostility and resentment. Why would we want to be feeling that? Moodiness, tearfulness, lack of sense of humor. That's a big one. That's a big indicator of that. Normally that you have a work colleague or your friend, family friend, whatever, and you have that little bit of banter that's between you. If you don't get that coming back sometimes, to me, that's an indicator that the person that I know very well is maybe got more things on their plate than maybe they could do with. And I might be able to help somehow. So that lack of sense of humor is very important, a good indicator. And you can see that across the board. So it doesn't matter what age you are, because stress, don't forget, doesn't just affect you. Stress affects maybe the people you're looking after. And dealing with their stress is very stressful. So understanding that emotional thing, we're going to come to that. I'm going to give you a very good flip of a switch for that. But yeah, let's carry on here. We kind of nightmares. Those are emotional symptoms. Well, hang on a moment. It's not just emotional, it's psychological as well. Concentration, attention, forgetfulness, inability to think clearly, difficulty in making just the most straightforward of decisions. Maybe it's because I've lost my perspective, that I'm just concentrating, I'm over focusing, and maybe obsessing over details. Maybe it's just that constant sort of gnawing feeling, that nagging, that actually I'm under pressure of time and the clock keeps ticking, like it's ticking now, and we're coming towards the end. So I'm going to just run through these bits and pieces here because there's a lot of things I need to get across. So mental exhaustion and burnout, we want to avoid that. But then there are behavioral symptoms as well. And we've got angry outbursts, aggression, non-stop talking, jumping in on top of other people's conversations, interrupting, nervous habits, workaholism, which I think is a word, or absenteeism. You know, now there's something there. The social withdrawal. Maybe it's a bit of we're neglecting how we look. So let's come back to when pressure becomes stress, because this is the fix. We need a certain amount. So this is actually a graph that was made for athletes, and it's about performance versus pressure. And what point does our performance reach peak under how much pressure? Well, we can see here very quickly that if we're really just ticking along, there's not much pressure, well, we can be fairly bored, couldn't we? Then we have our comfort zone, that area that we've invested heavily in over the years. We all have one. Yeah, I'm in my comfort zone, I'm fine. However, if I do need to, and there's a little bit more pressure applied, I can stretch myself. I can go the extra mile. That's my resilience, knowing that I can cope. And that's a really nice encapsulation. Resilience, my resilience means I can cope. So we're not going to talk about resilience just yet, but stretch, we can stretch. But when we stretch too long, that can become a strain. That strain will then see a drop off in performance almost immediately. And then it will fall off the edge of a cliff, because then we go into panic mode. We don't want that. So we want to remain in that comfort to stretch, because it's nice to stretch occasionally. That increases our resilience, our ability to feel that we're coping. So stress, let's take this word. Let's do something with it. We're going to reframe this word, because stress is that your emotional response. And your emotional response is different to somebody else's. So that's why people that are stressed out never seem to be able to come to maybe the same point of view. However, if I take out that word and I replace it with the word pressure, pressure is something I do understand in a non-emotional way. It's a logical word. And to me, it's a logical word, pressure. That if I put my hand on the desk and I lean with my other hand and I apply as much pressure as I can to my little finger, it's going to start hurting at some point. I'm applying pressure. In order to relieve the pain, what do? I remove the pressure. I relieve the pressure. Too much pressure in a vessel will make it burst. So if I can do something to help somebody relieve that pressure, or myself, what do I need? What do I need to relieve this pressure? Do I need a duvet day? Because that can be helpful. But I think that we maybe want to be a bit more proactive than that. Yes, we do all need to recharge the battery moments for sure. But understanding the pressure, well, can I get adjustments made? Can I help with anybody's adjustments? In maybe, for example, let's put this into a work placement. That can I help them with a task that would just alleviate a little bit of pressure? Can I do something for them that would just make them feel less pressurized? Because there's the secret. It's those adaptations that we can make. We all have choices. We all have maybe demands upon our time, and in the workplace we have responsibilities. But we have a really big responsibility when it comes to stress, and it's personal, and it has teeth by the health and safety executive. Psychological injury is considered personal injury. So we've got to identify risk factors. We've got to help people understand the underlying causes and also prevention. There's some form of measurement is needed in which you can gauge your performance in tackling this thing, because there's no point just going at it, oh yeah, we'll just do everything we can to relieve stress. That's not going to work. It's got to be metered. And you can get all this information from HSE dov.gov.uk. Get that from there. Stress talking toolkit, really useful, because management strategies include eating, and here we come to personal choices and things: eating a healthy diet, getting plenty of regular exercise, and plenty of sleep. That sounds like the 5-a-day police to me, but you do what you do, and because if you do ask yourself the questions and you are genuine and honest, you're going to come up with the answers. But maybe something as relaxing techniques, such as maybe yoga, deep breathing, getting a massage, or learning to meditate. Taking time out for hobbies such as reading a book or listening to music. Fostering healthy relationships. Having a sense of humor, trying to get that back if we may be losing it. Maybe helping others around us, not just maybe in workplace or but also maybe our neighbors in your community. But we're always got to remember that we've got to seek professional support when needed. And we can do that through schemes that the business that I work in, Life and Progress, we provide employee assistance programs. And by the employee assistance program, people can access professional help 24 hours a day, and especially when it comes to dealing with the pressures of life. And the payoff for learning to manage stress is peace of mind and perhaps a longer, healthier life. And that you don't have to feel like you're trying to push a massive ball uphill on your own through difficult terrain. That we can have support and help surrounding that. So I just want to sort of bring that around. Those things that we can do. We can look at mindfulness, but I'm not going to spend too much time here because we are unfortunately running out of a bit of time. But yeah, I'm going to just run through the slides just very quickly here. Just basically, mindfulness is letting the thought pass through your mind. We can't stop. We can't empty our brain because that's impossible. The brain is switched on 24 hours a day, always working. You'll be amazed at how many calories your brain burns when you're asleep. You'll think that is brilliant. If only I could sleep all day, that would be great, wouldn't it? Calorie negative input, all that. Anyway, mindfulness, when it comes to doing stuff for ourselves, it's just letting that thought pass through, just letting it go. And we can do it at our desk. So mindfulness is actually just noticing what's happening while it's happening without preference or judgment. Very important. There's a little thing here that we can do, noticing the nature of the mind. So just what I want you to do, just for the next couple of minutes, is to focus on your breathing. I want your eyes open and to breathe normally, and be ready to catch your mind that if a thought pops into it and it's not jogging on, that actually the way to get back there is to feel the air coming in through your nose. Look for that sensation. The brain automatically then distracts itself from the thought that came jogging in and goes to, oh, what are we noticing here? Are we smelling something? What are we smelling? Well, oh, there's air coming in. All of a sudden, the body's processes just take over and that thought passes on. So think of it like a journey in a car, and you by a junction, and there's a person wanting to cross the road, and you think, oh yeah, maybe they're going to need help cross the road, and then of course the light turns green, and you're off, and you're done, and you're not thinking about that person anymore. That's gone past in your view. Maybe it's the dog weeing against the lamppost that attracts your attention next, or some random event, because the brain's like that. It's always on the lookout. So we have to be ready to catch our mind, and when it does start to go, we just go, right, what's the sensation of breathing about? There's other deeper techniques, but this is really good. So a little bit of a fan of box breathing. Breathe in for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4. So 3, 2, 1. Deep breathe in and fill your tummy with air. Don't fill your chest with air. It has to come from the diaphragm, your tummy. Hold it. And then breathe out through your mouth for 4. Breathe in through your mouth for 4. Hold for 4. Breathe out slowly through your mouth for 4. If you do that, you're probably maybe noticing already some slight changes if you've been doing that and you've had no other distractions. But try it, because within literally 10 of those exercises, that your body will be starting to re-regulate. So evolutionary psychological perspective. It's our past development. We're designed for anxiousness. We're developed for fight and flight. We err on the side of cautions, and we're rather safe than sorry. We learn from negative events, and we remember negative events because I don't know why this is, but we seem to forget positive events. But it's the negative events are the things that keep us alive. So that's how we're hardwired. Always on the lookout. So we can't get past that. It's background anxiousness, smallest things we can react to. We're still wired that way. We can blame others. We can dwell on negatives. We can get stuck in a cycle. We can be constantly distracted and we cannot see a way out. That's where we have to realize it's not our fault. We're all a compassionate mess. We're an amazing machine. We're a musculoskeletal electrical chemical factory. And information flows around our body in about 475 miles an hour. So that feeling that you get in your gut because you may be feeling a bit anxious, that's instantaneous. That's a communication, your system starting to work its way. What's going on here? Let's assess this. Let's do the risk management. Let's do all the things that we know. And we can do that in split seconds without even conscious thought. But if we leave our mind alone, it will just do its own thing. And mindfulness helps us respond instead of reacting, respond instead of acting. So try now, talk later. It's about attitude, not trying to do anything when you're doing mindfulness, no competition with anybody, no analysis, open mind, beginner's mind, reserved judgment. Yeah, a light touch. And also don't forget that we must be kind towards ourselves. That's what really being mindful is. But we can't be that all the time because we've got to focus and obviously come to some decisions about things, and we've got standards and levels that we have to work towards. But yeah, we can be mindful in maybe 4 or 5 minutes and do a bit of mindfulness, which will just help us reset ourselves. So kindness towards yourself. The skills, well, it's just sitting, just breathing, just noticing. Return to your breath and attention. Focus and awareness, creating a time and space to do it. Self-care. So I'm now just going to zip through these last few because we're coming towards the end. And I don't want to take up any more of your precious time that you've afforded so far. So there's types of mindfulness: formal, informal. I do the informal more than I realize. There's a wide application, and there's actually, you can go deeper, turn that daily practice into maybe more than just once a day, turn it into 2 or 3 times a day, increasing the times as you do so. It could have some kind of ritual or some kind of spiritual attachment to it. There's no judgment there. You do whatever it is that you do to attain that place. But it is a place that we can occupy. So, what does resilience mean? Well, it's that ability to withstand the adverse events. And it's a resilience that really helps us with stress, because it's our ability, resilience gives us the ability to cope in a heightened situation. We can remain calm. Some people can have actually amazing clarity in the most stressful of situations. And those people may be emergency first responders, those sorts of things where they can't let emotions come into play. It's purely driven by logic and care and what can we do? So, yeah, without falling apart by actively and positively coping with stress. So if someone says what resilience means, well, yeah, we can do stuff to help us with resilience. We can feed into that bank account, but we never know how much is in the bank account of resilience until we need it. And then we come through something, we go, oh my word, how did I get through that? Oh, more resilient than I think. Ah, nice thought. Keep that. Yeah, because there is an optimal state. And it's feeling emotionally and physically and emotionally healthy. That is the true realization of good resilience, that maybe you feel more positive and hopeful, that you can feel that you're managing that stress effectively, those outside influences or the things that you maybe trip ourselves up over, that I have to remember that I am flexible and adaptable. I've got tools and resources available. So how do we build personal resilience? Well, we understand our strengths, understand what creates stress for you, act within your own circle of influence, not your circle of concern, because they're two different things. Learn specific strategies to help your resilience. Focus on outcomes, not the problem. Avoid energy drainers. We all have them. Situations and people will drain our energy. And sometimes I may have to revisit my values, rebuild that foundation again. And I must be flexible. Can't be rigid. I've got to bend with the wind. We've got to move with things. So resilience, been trying to achieve, be wary. Don't try to achieve too much. Remember, you always have some choice. Always have a choice, no matter how demanding the situation. And interpret maybe failure as feedback. Spend time in the present. Sharpen your tools, the tools that we have that will help us feel better. We need to actually invest in the relationships that we have. And actually, we have to practice building perspective as well. So, good gracious. Good gracious. Well, Melody Beattie said this, that gratitude unlocks the fullness of life. It turns what we have into enough and more. It turns denial into acceptance, chaos to order, confusion to clarity. It can turn a meal into a feast, a house into a home, a stranger into a friend. So we can turn I can't into I can't, it's impossible, into I can. I'm possible. And should you have access to an employee assistance program, there's always pathways there for you to use. But there's also other pathways. There's other pathways that we can engage with. So we must explore more. But here, just very quickly, just we provide this service through a 24-hour phone line. I'm not leaving that up there because that's that's a particular client detail there that I forgot to remove from the slide deck before I started. Probably in my little bit of stress and not being able to get technology to run in a straight line. So what I want to leave you with is, what is your takeaway? What is your takeaway from this evening? Any comments on what's your takeaway? We've run through a lot. Hopefully it's expanded a little bit of understanding around what stress is. Importantly, how we can reframe that word into a non-emotional word and understand it as pressure. So what's your takeaway this evening? Right. Okay. Here we go. Okay. Um, that's a good one. Um, learn not to say yes to everything asked of me. Yeah, because that's not helpful, is it? And here's a really good way of getting around that, is by saying, I'd love to help you, but right now I've got this to do. So when I've finished, I'll more than gladly help you. That's a really instant way of helping other people respect that you have a time thing yourself, that you have a workload. Rather than some, no, could you do this for me? Oh, yeah, yeah, sure, stick it on my desk. And then the worst thing is that someone comes along that bit of work, picks it up afterwards and goes, oh, ta. Instead of maybe saying, thank you for doing that, that saved me a lot of time. Um, we've just had another little chat come up here. Retired people pleaser. Yeah, stop being people pleaser. That, yeah, yes, but that's not to say we need to be unhelpful or rude or create further stress around our situation by reacting in maybe a way that might be an overreaction. But yeah, I definitely get that. So thank you there. Stop being a people pleaser. Absolutely. We can please some of the people some of the time. I think we know that, don't we? So anyone else would like to leave any little gems before we leave? I have to say that the gratitude thing, gratitude is a really powerful emotion. It could bring tears.
People have gratitude journals, don't they, Garth? And they record gratitude every day if they're that disciplined. And
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yes, and I would say I am very grateful for things in my life at this moment in time, and
yeah, I think you don't necessarily
that
need to write
lift.
it down to be grateful, do you? As you say,
Oh,
small things can be, just as powerful. I think sometimes people make it more difficult by suggesting it needs to be something it doesn't. It can just be just grateful for seeing a bird on a bird feeder, which I was grateful for when I parked my car this evening.
I was actually grateful for the robin that I heard singing when I got to the gym last night.
Yeah, it's some of
I
these
went
silly
through
things
my
like that, isn't it? As you say, you put this bird food out and some bird takes it. Excellent.
yeah,
I'll be grateful for that. Brilliant.
absolutely, absolutely.
Gar-
Well, yes,
Garth, so thank you so much for sharing this with us this evening. I'm sure this will be one of the ones that people do catch on replay, because obviously there's some stuff we can go. I was a 27, by the way, so I know where I am. I was 27,
hey, okay.
but
Well, that sounds a
wasn't at
very
all
honest
surprised I was a
answer.
27 either.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's one I'm sure people will catch on the replay and get lots and lots of value for. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom this evening. It's good to
no.
see you. Take very good care, and we'll see you again soon. But thank you for this evening.